think if you watch the video on our Twitter account of us opening our February cover of the month, Kyle and I really have no idea what's going on.
Nope. On that note, who holds that spot now?
I'm still a little confused. It's a restaurant in Cincinnati, or it's a type of chili, or both? Hey everyone, welcome to Reading the Green and our golf DFS preview show. It's Tuesday, February 15th. I'm Mike, joined with Kyle, and just Kyle this week. Jordan is off in Scottsdale and enjoying some time off. So just the two of us tonight. And remember that Reading the Green is the only fantasy golf source that combines great player picks with insights on which fantasy experts actually give the best advice. The result is that we have a bias-free approach. We're not swayed by just one or two articles or podcasts that we listen to, and we really zero in on the consensus plays each week. If you like this approach and you like what you hear and you have fun listening to us, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Reading the Green. Subscribe on any of the podcasting platforms. You can get our content each Wednesday. And of course, follow us on Twitter at RTG Podcast DFS. Our listener league keeps growing. We'll talk that a little later in this episode. We're looking to add more contestants each week. So please tweet at us if you'd like to play golf DFS with the RTG crew every week. This episode, we got the Waste Management Phoenix Open recap, preview of the Genesis Open, and we will sprinkle in a few other things. So, Kyle, just you and me, how's it going tonight?
So you said Jordan was taking some time off. I think he's just still recovering from his wicked Saturday at the Waste Management, man.
I feel like, listening back on last week's episode, I think a lot of people probably thought that he really was sneaking away to go to the tournament for a couple hours.
I mean, you saw our Twitter, right? He was there. Well, unfortunately, Jordan did not make it, which, yeah, I'm sure he's sad. He can go try to chase down the free swag golf covers that were hidden around the course.
I'm sure that was making him really jealous that he wasn't able to do that, and he was in the same city. That being said, probably not as much swag golf chatter tonight, because I think if you watch the video on our Twitter account of us opening our February cover of the month, Kyle and I really have no idea what's going on.
Nope. Very little. We're along for the ride.
We'll save that for next week. There has been a lot of action, and I'm sure Jordan wants to get everybody updated. So, but let's do this. Let's just jump into the Waste Management, because I think we're kind of chatting through some of the prep, like, I think there's kind of a lot to talk about, and just the two of us, talk some golf.
Sounds great to me.
All right. Well, I think we got to start with the fact that our plays came out on Wednesday last week. We had a little bit of a shuffle between when we recorded on Tuesday and when we released our final plays on Wednesday, and the guy at the top was none other than Scotty Scheffler.
Gotta love it. I had Scotty in every single lineup of mine outside of the GPP pivots. So glad our consensus plays can be helpful for the crew.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't easy for him to get it done. He and I know he said this in the press conference, but he was almost down and out after 13 holes, and he had made a couple of bogeys, and but he turned it on, and he took down Cantlay, who is, you look back at last year's I don't know which FedEx Cup tournament that was, where Cantlay had the 6-hole playoff with Bryson. Like, I had thought there was no chance Scheffler was gonna hold him off, but then you got to remember Scheffler took down, beat down on John Rahm in Ryder Cup last year, so he knows what he's doing in heads up play.
Yeah, so was it you or somebody in the group chat that said "see you, Scotty," right around midday?
I probably did.
It might have been. I have a buddy that's a little notorious for being a Debbie Downer, so it could have been him as well. But yeah, I thought after he missed the putt on 18 to win it, I believe it was 8-footer. Mm-hmm. I didn't think he would rebound in the extra holes there, but hey, he came through. And I'd probably at that point, the third hole, the Super Bowl had started, I believe, right? So
it did.
I don't know how many people were watching still.
I'm sure you saw the meme though of the guy at the Super Bowl watching it on his phone.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
So there was at least one. But yeah, I mean, Scottie Scheffler obviously like shaking the moniker of best player on tour without a win. Like it's kind of crazy that he was an undefeated Ryder Cup participant and he still didn't have a PGA Tour win. So this is a nice thing to add to his resume and kind of solidify him as one of the current stars.
On that note, who holds that spot now?
Ooh. I would have said Tom Hoagy, but he took care of that a couple weeks ago. I don't know. That's a really good question. I wish I should have done a little bit of research and think about that. Maybe you and I can ponder a little bit and we'll tweet something out of who we might think fill that spot.
Good idea. I kind of sprang that on you. So
no, that's all right. I think it's a really good question because I think I would have gone like a couple weeks ago. I would have probably put Scottie Scheffler in that category for sure. Like he's done all of these, shot 59. He's played on a Ryder Cup, a ton of top finishes in majors, but so obviously good for him. Do you think his hats look weird? Like I think I had this revelation that I feel like he buys his hats in a tennis shop. They just don't look like golf hats.
I can't say I've ever noticed. So interesting note for you though on when we're talking about PGA winners. So tee times came to my attention today for the Genesis, and I know we'll get there, but just popped in my mind as we were talking through that. So these are three groupings in a row. You have Scottie Scheffler, Jon Rahm, Jordan Spieth. You have Cameron Champ, Colin Morikawa, Xander Schauffele. You have Cameron Smith, Sam Burns, Justin Thomas. So you have a lot of titles right there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was curious. I'm like, hey, of that crew, who has the least amount? And I was very surprised when I looked up that Cameron Champ has won 3 PGA events.
Well, he won the 3M last year, didn't he?
Yeah, and then there's two years prior.
Okay.
But I knew he had one. I did not know he had 3.
Yeah, it's crazy. Then you put him up against Scottie Scheffler, and you say like, who's the higher ranking player? And yeah, Champ is much further down there, but he's won 3 times. Wow, that's actually really surprising. It's interesting how the PGA Tour builds those tee times out a lot of times for the fans, right? They put a lot of star power together and playing a lot of competitive golf, like that can be, and I'm sure for these guys that brings other distractions too, with just bigger crowds and all that. But if you're playing with guys that are going to play well, you might step your game up a little bit and try to keep pace, and that can be really good. If you're playing with guys that are not playing great, it's very easy to just sort of like slip into sort of like a middling form and not really do much. So I think that it's interesting that they do this for the spectators, but I think it has a real effect on the play sometimes.
Also known as the Kyle factor.
Sure. Okay, one more
just
thing.
To close that out, Cameron Champ's 3 wins though are Sanderson Farms in 2018, Safeway Open in 2019, and then as you said, 3M last year.
Yeah. One other thing on the waste management, and then we can get into more of like the model results and listener league and all that. But just the really quick, is there going to be like what is the fallout or what is the result of like the total party atmosphere in the tournament this week? We don't have to drain it, but like, is it going to be good? Or are we going to like now see the PGA Tour like send out a statement that says like, this is not going to happen anywhere else, any other time, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. I think let's start actually at the Phoenix Open, the People's Open, right? I did on Sunday. Don't get me wrong. I love the atmosphere. I love the environment. I've been there, as we talked about last week. Would recommend it highly to anyone, golf fan or just general sports fan in general. But doing the hole ones, I get that, right? But and don't get me wrong. Here's Harry Higgs, Joel Dahman. That was fun. But did we need to rain the green again? Like Let's just cheer them on. Everyone can have a grand old time. Throw your beer up in the stands. Let's not throw it on the green anymore.
It just took a long time. It just like honestly just slowed down the tournament. But yeah, I don't know. It was like unlike anything we've seen. So it was pretty cool. Do you buy that Patrick Cantlay's putt on 16 there was affected by a ball mark made by a can? Wasn't that what people were speculating?
I missed that.
Okay.
There
was some
it jumped or something.
It hit something, and there was talk about like how he didn't see a ball mark there. He would have fixed it. Was it an indentation from a can? I don't know. I think people are trying to make something of nothing.
I did notice on 16 in general, and granted that was on TV a lot more. It seemed like the players were spending a lot more time fixing things on the green.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's just buzz through some results here on Waste Management. So first of all, Listener League. That's what our listeners care about. A listener won. A listener takes home the top prize, money out of our pockets, just like we said every listener can do. This is J.Y. Sadi getting it done over Kyle. How do you feel about that?
6 made cuts. I thought I had it, but J.Y. Snoddy also had 6 made cuts, and going into Sunday, I thought it was in a good spot, but Taylor Gooch slipped a little bit, and he had Billy Horschel, who really shot up the leaderboard and took it down. So I got some money back, second place, and it's fun to see a listener win every now and then.
I agree. Yeah, let's get a few more listeners in this week. We can expand some of the paid out spots the more people we get. And it's fun. It's fun to talk about and compete against some of our friends and get to know some people. Lineup wise, I think we're talking about this. We did okay. The model was really good this week. Tons of great options. There were really just a handful of landmines up the board. Sam Burns being the first one who really had no business backing it up on Friday, and that sunk me. And he was in my core on my tournament entries, and that just that hurt from having a really great weekend and just made it okay.
Yeah, Sam Burns definitely hurt me as well. As you said, great week overall. Strong week for the MPI. We also already talked about Scotty Scheffler being up there, but you have Hideki, you have Matt Fitzpatrick, John Rahm. Obviously, a lot of people are on him, but a guy like Billy Horschel, who didn't have great mention share, but had a 70 MPI and comes down with the top 5. So there was a lot of value at the top of the model. It was good for us on the cash games personally. One of these weeks, the stars are gonna align on the GPP. We keep getting close. You had a really good week last week.
Yeah.
I just keep missing 1 or 2 guys right on the number, like you said this week, and otherwise it could have been a lot of fun.
Yeah, great call out on the performance index, because we did see a huge advantage. We had 3 guys that sat in that top portion of our model that we try to measure 80 on our performance index and above. And so Rahm, Matsuyama, and Fitzpatrick all having really good weeks, which leads me to our top contributor for the week was Fantasy Pros, and put together 3 picks: Scheffler, Fitzpatrick, and Matsuyama. So if you were tailing Matt McKay and the Fantasy Pros Golf DFS preview article, you would have started with 3 really good options. And I think you could have probably built a pretty good lineup with those 3 guys. I think they were probably affordable enough to fit together. So really no one else was close after that. Pat Mayo had a decent week with Thomas and Connors as his primary plays, but Connors really struggled over the weekend, and I think that kind of sunk him a little bit.
And you said this in one of our tweets that went out, but shout out to Fantasy Data for the Gala play. At $6,700, like you said, you would have to go down the board a little bit for somebody like Rahm, and that could have made your lineup right there.
Yeah, I went back to check some of the just check the write up on him, and he's had decent form. He has popped in a couple of tournaments earlier this year. I mean, it's tough to bank on a guy that's taking a sponsors exemption and he's coming down that low on the salary board. But if you're filling out a tournament lineup, it certainly would have been a good flyer for the week and paid off. You just really fell for him I'm sure people saw the videos of him coming off the course after and hugging his parents and all that, but he put everything he had into that, and you kind of blame it on one tough bounce on 17, and that was it.
Yeah, one last thought, Mike. Waste management. I think you wanted to talk about Patrick Cantlay a little bit, and how you didn't listen to yourself enough.
You're right. In our core plays segment, I'll own this. In our core plays segment last week on the pod, I said Cantlay was my guy. We said we had to pick. You're gonna have to pick from one of the top 10K and above guys, and I said Cantlay has such a high floor. You got to ride him this week. And we worked on the model a little bit Tuesday night after recording into Wednesday, and Scheffler popped to the top, and I immediately sort of changed my position and went a little more balanced. So I started with Scheffler and worked my way down the board and just kept Cantlay in a couple of tournament entries, and that backfired. I mean, I coulda, shoulda, woulda, but he does have a really high floor right now. And I would just, looking ahead to the Genesis, like he's finished in the top 5, like how many times this year? It's 5 or 6 times he's finished in the top 5 in the last handful of weeks. So he's got such a high floor, and I'll say that now. We'll see if I can put my money where my mouth is when it comes time to make lineups.
Yeah. Then I know I said last time on the waste management, one more, but our model has had the winner as one of the top plays for 4 straight weeks. So hopefully we keep that going.
Yeah, that's it's good stuff, and it's certainly creating a lot of opportunity for us to have good weekends. I'll just make a couple more comments on our contributors, and then we'll take a quick break. So on the season, we tweeted this out before we started recording, but we did share out our top 5 contributors through 16 events this year. So Pat Mayo and his recommended plays are still leading the way narrowly over Fantasy Pros. One of our favorites over the last couple of years, Jason Stovall, is still pretty icy on some of his plays, and so I'm waiting for that to turn around and see a little bit of promise out of him. And then one more to keep an eye on if we're just looking for opportunities to get guys to make cuts. Rotoballer, which we don't talk a lot about here, but is one of the contributors that we follow pretty closely, is making about 70% of their cuts the last 3 weeks, and so that's good enough to maybe look for some options there if we're looking for plays that we think are confidently going to make cuts. So that it on waste management. Anything else to exhaust?
Not from waste management, but what do you have in the class tonight?
Good question. I have the last of, frankly, I don't know how Fair State, Twin Cities Brewery, I think it's a SKAFL, SKAFL. It's their Winter Hazy IPA.
I have a Foggy Geezer from War Pigs, Three Floyds, and McKellar joint. Nice solid, hazy IPA.
It's all right. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, so I didn't make a special run, and the only I would say sought after IPA I still had in the fridge was the same one as last week. So I couldn't go back with the same.
Yeah, I understand.
Same brew. I couldn't go make the same joke about for real. So.
Well, when we get the crew together after a couple weeks of various vacations, I got some really good stuff lined up that I've been saving. It's really all I have left. So I want to break that out next couple of pods.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Okay, let's take a quick break. We'll come back and talk about the Genesis Open. Welcome back. We got our Genesis Open preview, but first we talked about the Reading the Green Listener League. We had a bunch of new players this week at the Waste Management Phoenix Open. Let's add a few more this week at Genesis. Tweet at us if you'd like to join our Listener League. We will send you the link to join. And like I said, you can win money out of our pockets, just like J.Y. Sadi did last weekend. So looking forward to adding a few more folks this week. So Kyle, let's talk about the Genesis Open here. Really, really strong field for Riviera. 10 of the top 10 players in the world and 18 of the top 20. Like, Great. This is, I don't remember this tournament being quite so strong. I know this kicks off a series of events here that we're going to have where we get really good fields, but it creates such excitement throughout the entire weekend to have all these guys in one place.
I remember it last year being a great event to watch. There's some fun holes. You have hole 10, which was kind of one of my favorite holes of configurations, where you have a little bit of trouble, but it's a drivable par 4, and it's a hard course to hit fairways on. And for some reason, I just distinctly remember Sunday at this event last year, which I can't say is the case for every PGA event, but I do. And it was a great finish.
Well, Max Homa took down Tony Finau in a playoff, and I think it just sets up well to have some good drama here, and you're going to get some marquee names that are going to be in the mix. So let's talk about who's popping this week in the model. I think as we were prepping, it's very different than what we were looking at last week.
Yes, the last couple of weeks, I would say. Even more than that, last 5-6, it's been very top heavy. We have a wide distribution at this point, and we also are short a couple of contributors that we usually have by the time we record, so maybe that's part of it. But we do have, I believe, 75% in?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and right now we have 7 players popping at 40% mention share, and they're kind of all over the board from a price point perspective. We have Patrick Cantlay, Dustin Johnson, the names you would expect. Xander Schauffele, Rory McIlroy, Cameron Smith, Will Zalatoris, Thomas Peters, and Mark Leishman. So you have people there mentioned from 7,400 and Peters all the way up to 11 at Cantlay. And then you have a large grouping and still getting multiple mentions, in the 3 to 4 range as well. So keep an eye out for tomorrow when we get everyone in, and maybe we'll see a little bit more differentiation. But right now, things are really bunching up, Mike.
Yeah, so it's a good call out that usually by the time we record, we have a little bit more content to go off of. But I don't know that's going to change a whole bunch. I think basically the point is there's a lot of really good players at this tournament, and our experts are divided on exactly who's going to be in the mix. I think it makes it really interesting to build lineups when you do have 7 and 8K players that are popping to the top, and gives you some flexibility to go a few different directions. So you mentioned who is, we have this big bunch of guys at 40% mention share. Why don't you give me 1 or 2 players, maybe inside that group, but maybe outside that group that you might be targeting as well?
Yeah. Guy I want to highlight who's been really strong for me in cash the last 6 months or so, Christian Bazoon. He has made 7 of 8 of his last cuts. He has 3 top 20s in that span. And then going back even a little bit further, 15 of the last 16. And at $7,200, if you're building out a cash lineup, there's a lot worse places to start. So I'll be really watching him as we come in over the next 24 hours and see what his NPI, his mention power index is looking like. But that's someone I certainly have my eye on.
Okay. All right. From my end, I always, there's a lot's made of the Kikuya grass at Riviera, just like there's that grass at in some spots on the Torrey Pines courses. So that means we need an Australian to fit in our lineups. And there's a couple that are here at 20-some% mention share and above. We could pick, we mentioned Cam Smith, we mentioned Mark Leishman, and Adam Scott fits in that mix as well. I'm probably looking. I guess I'm probably looking at Mark Leishman, just given a bit of a price break, and I need that. I need that Australian experience. I know that feels a little goofy, but I mean the numbers don't lie between this course and Torrey Pines. Just has often attracted a lot of really good Australian golfers. I also might sprinkle in a little bit of Tom Hoagy. I told you guys, as long as he plays well, I'm going to talk about him. And here he is getting serious love already from our contributors on the heels of his first PGA Tour win, plus another he was in contention partway through the round on Sunday at Scottsdale. So I might sprinkle a little bit of him too, just because it feels like he's ready to keep up with the big boys.
So you mentioned the Australian connection. Yeah, so to go back to our groups, we're hovering around 40% mention share. I'm really intrigued by Cam up there at 9,100, a little bit of a price break over, the upper echelon, and has good experience here. He was right in contention last year. He finished third, I believe, right?
Yeah. I think so, yeah.
And then, a guy I think would be good for us to discuss, but I'm not sure where I quite land on yet, is Dustin Johnson. I know he has good history here, and everyone's models, he pops for everything that Riviera represents. It's harder for me to jump on a guy at 10,200 who we haven't seen stateside dominating somewhat recently. What do you think there?
You talked about that last week, and in that he was a different player after some of his good play in the Middle East. Just looking at our model and from a power index standpoint, he's on the low end, and which implies that yes, he's got the same love that some of these other players that we talked about have, but we're not getting it from our premier contributors. Now we still have a few that we gotta get over the next 24 hours, but we're not seeing what we want to see out of Dustin Johnson here, even though people are talking about him a little bit. So to me, that's more like this is a kind of a prove it week for him. Like, let's see if he. I'm probably not going to be hard on Dustin Johnson, but let's see if he at least backs it up with a decent performance. He hasn't been himself lately.
I think that's a great take. He, at that price point, even though he does have some good history here, I think I need to see it 1 week stateside before I jump.
Yeah. Let me throw a name at you, because we talked a little bit about it in some of our prep. Pat Mayo, who we just talked about, we just tweeted about as being our top contributor in his recommended plays through the 16 events of this PGA Tour season. He's got 2 names this week that we haven't mentioned yet, which is interesting when he goes against the grain. He did it a couple weeks ago when he went with Jordan Spieth at Pebble Beach, and we were all kind of scratching our heads, and Spieth ended up having a great week. Colin Morikawa, that's not who I want to talk about. Who I want to talk about is Bobby McIntyre. And so Robert is a lefty, and Mayo makes the case that lefties might have that special advantage at Riviera, like they sometimes have at Augusta, on the heels of past winners at Riviera, like Mike Weir and Phil Mickelson and Bubba Watson 3 times. Do you buy that Robert McIntyre is going to magically have a great week at Riviera because he's left-handed?
I think Phil Mickelson and Bubba Watson just belong in a different echelon than maybe some of the other lefties that I'm not going there. Granted, maybe there's a little something to it if you're between Robert McIntyre and somebody else for a last lineup spot. Sure, go lefty. Am I taking that to the bank that, hey, lefties get a huge advantage here? I'm not.
Sure. Well, it's a fair point. I mean, McIntyre is going to cost you 7,100. So if you're down in that range, we talked about some good low 7K options. Thomas Peters, certainly someone who's coming up at the top of our model that's about in that price range. Robert McIntyre has been pretty good overseas the last handful of weeks, but I agree. It feels a little bit out of left field, no pun intended. But I might sprinkle a little bit just to see what happens and see if that superstition holds true.
And to your point, if you get some love from the last 25% of our contributors here, yeah, I'll give him a close look. But I got to see it from more than one of our main guys.
All right, fair enough. So I think the takeaway here is we've thrown out a lot of names. We offered who's sitting in that top group at the top. check back with us on our Twitter account on Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday evening when we get our final plays out there, because I think that's what it's gonna take to break up and find some differentiation in that top group there. Kyle, what about tiers? I know we often like to highlight one or two tiers we're looking at this week.
Yeah, we're gonna slide down the board because all the way to tier 6. There is some very interesting names in tier 6. Guys usually don't see down that far. So Patrick Reed this week, tier 6, $7,400. Rickie Fowler, tier 6, $6,600. You also have Tom Hoagy, Luke List, Siwoo Kim, Francisco Molinari. So, I mean, a lot of guys in the last, well, guys like Reed over the last several years been at a much higher tier, and then a couple guys that have been playing really well lately too. At this point in time, based on what we're seeing in the model from a mention share and an MPI standpoint, I think Hoagy would be your guy. Who you're going to have to lean. I can't believe I'm saying that over a $7,400 Patrick Reed, but that's where their games are at this point. We're going to have to go with form, and that's what most of our contributors are leaning with their recommendation.
I never thought I would hear they say that. I'm sure Tom Hoagy never thought he would hear you say that. But yeah, that's interesting. I mean, Fowler and Reed in tier 6 in a marquee field. I mean, and the fact that you said it, Rickie Fowler at 6,600. 60. Who are the other players between 64 and $6,700? Like, this is it's crazy how far Rickie has fallen, and like no one's gonna argue his form. Like, and frankly, how many times has Rickie won on the PGA Tour? I think it's 5. Right? Like, if we want to get into a debate about like Rickie's career, he has been a poster boy, but he hasn't necessarily backed it up, except for the 1 year where he had top 5 finishes in all 4 majors. Rickie has he's been a advertising icon, and this is lower than he deserves, but it's representative of his play.
Well, that's one thing I noticed about price points this week. I feel like DraftKings took the opportunity with a nice full field event to reassess where some guys were. That's finally down to where he kind of deserves based on where he's playing. Maybe it should be 7,100 or something, but it's in that range, and I think the same goes with Patrick Reed. So, like, in general this week, I think you can find a lot of value, 6,500, 7,500 in there that we haven't been able to see because it hasn't been as strong a field. So I definitely will probably take a little bit of a different approach than I have for the last handful of events.
Yeah, I mean, case in point, one guy we just talked about in tier 6, Tom Hoagy, at 7,500. So at Pebble, I think he was 8,500. He backs down to 8,100 at Phoenix, and now he's down to 7,500. Yes, the field's been getting stronger, but he's been performing, and I'm really surprised to see he's a top 40 player in the world now, and he's that far down the board here. So maybe that's a place. Maybe that's a bit of a misprice given his form. I probably want to take a little closer look about how his game sets up at Riviera, but 7,500 in tier 6 feels pretty low for a guy that's been on fire this winter.
Definitely an interesting event. Stronger field,
yeah.
Different pricing configuration. So, as we've said multiple times already, but stand by for tomorrow. We'll get out an update.
Great point. All right, let's get out of the golf talk a little bit. I know this was a lot of golf talk for our listeners, and I think we can attribute that to Jordan not being here and keeping us in check. That being said, we'll bring back some of the swag golf head cover hunting talk next week when we catch up on that. But Kyle, anything about I think listeners probably want to hear how your Super Bowl menu turned out, because we talked so much about it, and rumor was you were taking on In-N-Out Burger with your own kind of home style version.
Yeah, so In-N-Out worked out very well. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I might have ate too much over the last couple of days, some leftovers. I thought that one turned out really well. Skyline chili, to be honest, I've never had actual Skyline chili. found a copycat recipe online that had good reviews and a lot of people saying, hey, yeah, this tastes like the real thing. So, Mike, have you ever had Skyline chili?
I had to look it up when you guys first started talking about it. I'm still a little confused. It's a restaurant in Cincinnati, or it's a type of chili, or both?
It's a restaurant, but like if you looked up Cincinnati chili online, it would also be Skyline chili. So it's in case there's other people out there that don't know, it's a kind of a chili that you serve on noodles or hot dogs, but they also cover it in copious amounts of cheese and diced white onions.
How does that work for a guy that's lactose intolerant?
Well, I was going to say, for me, it's not a great fit. I'm lactose intolerant, so I'm not going to eat like 5 pounds of shredded cheddar, like all the pictures of it show. But the chili's different. It's definitely not a Midwest chili, and the reviews I got from the people that ate it is like, on its own, it's a good. Just if you want to call it chili, they wouldn't have had that mindset going in. You know, there's no beans, and it's more of a homies or like a warming spice blend. There's like ground cloves. There's shredded chocolate in it, like dark,
sure,
cacao chocolate. So there's like it's almost more of like a mole flavor.
Yeah,
I think I did a pretty good rendition. Yeah, I've heard some people call it the actual Skyline chili gross. I think mine was pretty solid. I don't know if I want it every day. It's a very kind of unique flavor.
So maybe it sounds like the results were similar to the actual game. The Los Angeles food won by a little bit over the.
Oh yeah, well, if the results were, it would have been a blowout probably.
Oh, okay. All right, fair enough.
No, it was good. I've just. With the leftovers, I've leaned towards the In-N-Out burger over the Skyline chili.
All right.
But the halftime show, pretty entertaining, huh?
There's so many memes out there that are so spot on. I can't sum up more about the one that really resonated with me, given how old we are, was when I saw the Rolling Stones and the Who in Super Bowl halftime shows and feeling so disconnected from that. That's how and my parents, I'm sure, loved it. That's how I'm sure the way that I felt seeing those artists perform was how, like, you know, Gen Z felt about seeing them. Hey, they're old. I don't get the music. Who are these people?
What year was Rolling Stones and the Who? I feel like our parents were older when
they were. I am exaggerating a little bit, but like. But this was a halftime show made for the 35 to 45 age range, I think.
Oh, for sure, and I loved every minute of it.
Yeah, no, it was. I did too. All right, well, I guess last call for Listener League for the Genesis Open. You got about 36 hours to tweet at us and get in on this week's contest. Love to have you. And with that, we will wrap things up. And we'll be back in a week with results from the Genesis Open and look ahead as the PGA Tour moves to the Florida for the Honda Classic. See ya.